I had hoped to say nothing about this, he said, straightforwardly enough. But since it is known, my wife and I had had an argument that morning. When I left the house I was still irritated, but on thinking it over I decided to go back and apologize. After all, she was a sick woman, and after so many years of marriage. His voice broke. "Did you see her when you returned?" asked the coroner, smoothly. "No. Everything was quiet, and I decided she was asleep. So I went out again." "I was not in the house 2 minutes." "Did you go up the stairs?" "I did not." "Can you tell us just what you did do?" "Easily. I walked into the hall, decided my wife was asleep, decided as it was hot to leave my gloves on the hall table, and having done so went out again." "That is all?" "Absolutely all." "Now, Mr. Lancaster, will you tell us what this controversy with your wife was about?" "I'm sorry, but it may have some bearing on this inquiry." "It was a family matter." "Can't you be more explicit than that?" He hesitated. "I can be entirely explicit," he said at last. It concerned the amount of gold and currency she kept in the house. I considered it, among other things, highly dangerous. In these days of crime. It was not until you had left the house that you thought of that? I had thought of it all along. But as I left the house with Mrs. Talbot she spoke of it. She is here. You can ask her if you like. Had there been any other reason for this anxiety of yours? As I understand it, this hoarding had been going on for some months. It seemed to me that he hesitated again. No particular reason, no. My daughter Emily had claimed once or twice to have heard someone on the roof at night. So, as I understand it, you decided to go back and urge that the money be placed in a safe place, and then changed your mind? Precisely that, sir. Are you certain that the front door was locked behind you when you left? Absolutely certain. In view of what was worrying me, I tried it after I had closed it. It was locked. The remainder of his testimony referred largely to the events of the earlier part of the day, which I have already given. To my surprise and the disappointment of the crowd, the matter of the chest and its contents was dropped for the time. I know now that the police, working with the coroner, had determined to limit the inquiry as much as possible to the actual events of the day and particularly of the afternoon of the murder. Then too there may be rules as to evidence given before a coroner which eliminated the chest, save as it actually bore on the movements of certain people on that day. At the best I can only give my recollection of the questions and answers, but I think I have been fairly accurate. And then at last Jim Wellington was called and sworn. Chapter 17. Jim seemed calm enough as a witness and he made, at least at first, a good impression. But there was no getting away from the fact that he had been in the house and in the room, and that he had tried to get away without this being known. Questioned on this, however, he was firm and unshaken in his statement. Earlier in the day, he thought between 11 and 12 o'clock, he had received word from Margaret Lancaster that her father wanted to see him at 4 that afternoon. She gave as a reason his anxiety about the amount of gold and currency in the house, and he had agreed to go. He had left his car at his own house and walked to the Lancasters'. As he had a key, he opened the door and went in, but Mr. Lancaster was not in his library, and so, having waited a few minutes, he finally decided to go up the stairs to his aunt's room. That must have been, he said, at 4 o'clock or perhaps a couple of minutes earlier. Mrs. Lancaster's door was slightly ajar, and everything was quiet save for Emily Lancaster talking to her bird across the hall. He pushed open the door to his aunt's room. The shades were drawn and at first he did not notice anything wrong. Then he reached the bed and saw her. He saw no axe or other weapon, nor did he look for one.